we are going to review how to multiply decimals. In our first example, we have 2/10 times 3. So that means we have 3 groups of 2/10. So on our decimal grid that we have right here, I'm going to highlight 2/10 in one color. And then another group of 2/10 in a different color. And in our third group, in a third color. So we know that 10 hundredths equals 1/10, and that's why there's one color. So when I count them up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 tenths shaded in. Okay? What's so important about understanding that is if I were to line this up vertically to solve it like a normal multiplication problem, I'm going to multiply like normal, where 3 times 2 is 6 and 3 times 0 is 0. The thing that we have to remember is when I look at decimals, we basically have a decimal point right here because that's a whole number. I don't need to line them up when I multiply. But what I do need to know is I only have one number right here behind my decimal point. So to keep my equation balanced, I need to put one decimal point in my product as well. Okay? Let's look at a different example. Now I have 33 hundredths times 5, so that's 5 groups. So that means I have 3/10 and 3 hundredths. I may need to pull out another decimal grid, actually. So let me do that. Give me 1 second. Alright, so I have 2 decimal grids. So I'm going to have 3/10 and then 3 hundredths, and then 3/10, and I'm going to shade in 3 hundredths right here so I can keep that going, and then I'm going to do a third group because I need 5 groups. 1, 2, 3, and then another 3. Okay, go back to my color. So that I have 3 groups of 33 hundredths. I need 2 more groups. So 1, 2, there's 3/10, and then 1, 2, 3 hundredths for my fourth group, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So when I go and I look, I have one whole decimal grid colored in, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. So write that as a decimal. That is 1 and 65 hundredths. Now you may be asking, well, I don't always have decimal grids, so how do I solve this in a normal equation? When you set this up vertically, I'm going to scoot this over. I'm going to have 33 hundredths, just like this, times 5. Remember, 5 is a whole number, so there's basically a decimal point that's behind it. I'm going to multiply like normal. 5 times 3 is 15. I write down my 5, carry my 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 more is 16. Carry my 1 to the next place value column. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 more is 1. Just like we did in the last one, we have 2 numbers behind the decimal point. To keep my equation equal, I have to have 1, 2 behind the decimal point. So once again, I get 1 and 65 hundredths as my answer. On this page, you have 4 equations that are practicing decimals times a whole number. Pause the video, practice setting it up vertically, multiplying like normal, and then counting to see how many digits are behind the decimal point so your answer reflects the same amount to keep it equal. Now we have a decimal times a decimal. We have 3/10 times 8/10. So I'm going to highlight vertically and horizontally. So I'm going to do 3/10 vertically, and then I'm going to do 8/10 horizontally. Okay, so now the key important thing is that you're not going to have to look at where they overlap and see how many squares that is. And 1 square is 1/100th. So if I were to see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3. So I have an 8 by 3, which we know 8 times 3 is 24. But since each square is a hundredth, so that means it's 0.24 hundredths. When I line this up vertically, since I have the same amount of digits, it just happens that my decimal point lines up. That doesn't always happen. That would be an 8. There we go. I'm going to multiply normally. Do I have to put my zeros? No, but it's nice to have a place value of my whole numbers. And I know 8 times 3 is 24. And I can go through 8 times 0, go through the whole process, and I'm still going to get down to 24. And I'm going to look to see, I have 2 digits behind the decimal point. I'm going to have 2 digits behind my decimal point in my answer as well. Now this time I have hundredths and tenths, and so trying to represent that in a decimal grid with thousandths gets a little complicated. So this time I'm just going to line them up vertically, which is 25 hundredths times 3 tenths. And as you can see, I don't have my decimals lined up, and that's okay. All I really need to do is just multiply normally. 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 more is 7, and 3 times 0 is 0. And this 0 right here is going to keep everything in my row as 0. So I'm going to leave this as is. Now, for my answer, I have to go back to what I have doing. I've got to see how many digits are behind the decimal point. So I have 1, 2, 3 digits. So my answer, 1, 2, 3 decimal point. So that's 0 and 75 thousandths as my answer. It all comes down to make sure that it is balanced. I have 3 digits in front of the equal sign. I have to have 3 digits behind the equal sign. It helps to keep the equation balanced. Now, over here, I have some of the same type of questions, number 3 and number 4, a little bit more challenging. You have whole numbers, and it still goes through the same process. Multiply normally, count your digits behind your decimal point, and then you should come up with your product.